now we're going to come to Shoemaker's conclusion. And you're going to see Al-Fadi and I take on each other in a debate. You haven't seen a debate like this. We're going to go back and forth. We're going to tear each other to pieces. This is going to be fun. Who wins the debate? You decide.
Despite all of what was mentioned in the book, despite all of what these scholars have said, despite what we know, it seemed like there is a surprising conclusion that was reached by Dr. Shoemaker, which we will be putting the spotlight on this today. Again, we're doing it in a spirit of just peer review, in the spirit of just academia. We don't have an agenda, myself and Dr. J, and we're hoping that Dr. Shoemaker is either watching these episodes or maybe at some point in the future he'll be willing to interact with us. We would love to have him. We'll be honored to interact with him, and maybe we'll hear from him directly about some of these conclusions. So Dr. J, what are we talking about here?
Well, this is in some ways, it's a curious, I don't know if I want to call it troubling, that's not the right word, but this is a common occurrence that we see right across the board. It's not just Shoemaker saying this, others do the same thing. And I'm curious as to why. What am I talking about? The last few episodes, you've noticed we've been talking about the Hijaz, we've been talking about Mecca, Medina, and over again, you're getting the same narrative, the same historical perspective from the historians themselves who have done all the research. And that is that there's no way that this book, the Quran, could have existed down in the Hijaz. Neuwirth saying that there is not the sophistication of theology that far south. We have Hoyland who's saying there are no Jews. Hawting says much the same thing. There are no Christians that far south in order to have these kind of discussions that are just pervasive right through the Quran. We have reference after reference of people who are saying there are large populations down there, maybe a few hundred in each one of these hamlets. They're not even talking about Mecca. In fact, you notice they stay away from Mecca. They don't even mention it. They're talking about Yathrib, and they're zeroing in on Yathrib because the last 10 years of his ministry were in Yathrib. The Medinan surahs, as we call it, the very first part of the Quran. So if you take the Quran and split it in half, this part, the first half, is called Medinan, this is called Meccan. Some are in each, you're correct, but by and large, this would be what was revealed to him from 622 to 632 in a place called Medina, what is then called Yathrib. And they're looking at Yathrib and say, this could not have accommodated this kind of text. Wansbrough came out in 1977 with that thought. In 1978, with two books called Quranic Studies and Sectarian Milieu. And he blew this whole notion open. You cannot have these discussions. You cannot have this literature. You cannot have all these borrowings, which we're going to get into, the source material, from that far south. They just didn't exist that far south. Why? Because there were no Jews, there were no Christians that far south. Why? Because there was no water, there was no trade, there was no population, there were no cities. There was nothing for Jews and Christians to go to. Why would you go to a desert where there's a few hamlets and all they're selling is dates, right?
Right.
So Shoemaker is making this point. He's giving these quotes and he's putting forth their arguments so that he can come to his conclusions. So here he comes in page 233, so 233.
And just to warn you, I'm going to play the devil's advocate here.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you be Shoemaker right now.
I'll be Shoemaker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stephen, why in the world on page 233 you say this? These Quranic traditions were formed in early Islamic Syro-Palestina and Mesopotamia. Where is that, Stephen? Syro-Palestine and Mesopotamia is where?
Well, that's north.
North, okay.
Right.
So way up north, like 1,000 miles up further north, right?
Right.
And it was these northern areas, you even said so, these northern areas which exerted an influence on the final text of the Quran at least equal to, if not even greater than, the cultural traditions of the 7th century Hijaz. These would include the traditions of Jesus' nativity, those of Alexander the Great, Dual Qarnayn in chapter 18 of the Quran, which almost certainly derived from a post-Hijazi context way up north. So you're saying that, we agree with it, no one's having a problem with it, you're quoting all the other scholars to support and to back you up. Then why do you say what you say next? On the same page, in the same next paragraph, look at what you say. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, there is a high degree of probability, I think, that at least some, and perhaps much, so most of the Quran content was inspired by Muhammad's preaching in the Hijaz during the early 7th century. This has not to say that we have any of the actual words that he taught in the Quran. So you have nothing to show for this. You're just making this summation. You're coming to this conclusion. You have nothing to show for it, but you're still putting him down there in the Hijaz. Even traditions that possibly originated with Muhammad himself must be recognized in their present form as effectively new compositions produced on the basis of his ideas by his later followers in the newly conquered territories of the Roman. So you're even admitting in that paragraph that we don't really know how much of it. We just know that much of the Quran comes from that. Tell me how you can come to that conclusion.
That's a good question. But here it's as a scholar, okay? As a scholar, my job is to report what other scholars are saying, make conclusions based on what I know is possibly supported. But when it comes to Muhammad, there is this great possibility that, yes, we don't have a whole lot of tangible evidence to support the existence of this character in the 7th century, but traditionally speaking, looks like there has been some material that survived, maybe even orally, to support the existence of a person.
Can you give me an example?
What if? Well, I mean, you have you have the hadith, you have the seerah, the narrations.
Weren't you just the one that just said in the last episode?
Just a second.
That doesn't appear.
You're asking me to defend myself, right? So I'm telling you, as a shoemaker, how I would be thinking. As a scholar, I want to really put my hand on tangible things to confirm that maybe Muhammad didn't exist, or at least this character didn't exist down south. For now, I'm not convinced as much. What if the theory is this? I'm telling you, things originated north. But wasn't there a political split in the north that caused some to migrate south and reinvent a new empire? What if they're the one who brought with them all of that and created this character?
Can you support that? Is there anything that shows you, or are you just saying this off the top of your head?
You used this claim many times when it came to the Black Stone, the destruction of the Kaaba, the rebuilding of the Kaaba south.
And what are the dates for that?
What I'm saying is
that's late 7th century.
Based on what?
687.
Based on what are you using?
Oh, no. I'm not even talking about the tradition for that. That's well known outside.
Okay,
we know the Black Stone. It goes right back to
you reached
Elagabalus,
that conclusion based on that. I'm trying to tell you this is how I am processing my own.
But what you've done. You've done two things simultaneously. You have not come up
as
with any evidence.
As a scholar, you have to approach it that way.
As a scholar, you haven't shown me any evidence outside the traditional account.
Well,
that's not scholarly.
The book is still open on this.
No,
right?
it isn't. You've just closed it down because you have yourself has said you can't trust the tradition.
Can you find a single document like this that corroborate the lack of existence of Muhammad so far?
Absolutely.
This one is attacking the Quran already because there is a lot of evidence to do so.
Robert Spencer has always shut that one down. There's a document. I have it right here in my bag. I can show it to you. But let me just put this, throw it as a devil advocate back to you again. Let's just use that same criteria you've just used, and let's do it on the traditions of Jesus Christ. Let's go to the Gnostic accounts of Jesus Christ, which come from the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th century, that say that Jesus was a liar, that he actually killed people, that when he was growing up, he was devious. Let's just use that and say that's probably more authoritative because it fits what you would think about a person would be. Let's then go to the Gnostic accounts and not go to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John from the 1st century. Why don't we use the Gnostic accounts to support who Jesus was?
I wouldn't even use a Gnostic account. John of Damascus himself was talking about a person.
You're not answering my question about Jesus right now. Why don't we go to the Gnostic accounts? Using your criteria, the later accounts are more authoritative than the earlier accounts.
No. We're not talking about Jesus. We're talking about Muhammad right now.
I'm using you as a Christian. I'm going to take the same criteria
the information that you have about Jesus is you have tangible evidence that existed earlier. Now, let's use John of Damascus.
No tangible instance.
Answer my question.
You haven't finished. You have no
John of Damascus.
You have no tangible instance that shows that Muhammad even existed in the 7th
century. You haven't answered my question. Why would John of Damascus in the 8th century talk about a person who created a religion called Islam and mocks that person? Yes, where did he get that information from?
Well, he got that from Abd al-Malik. He got that from al-Hajjaj, who were writing in 705.
So he's talking about someone that existed.
Absolutely.
He wasn't talking about someone that was living in his time.
Okay. Look at who is the Muhammad he's talking about? He is a man who's in Jerusalem. Okay?
Doesn't matter. But there was a character.
You're making my point for me.
There was a
You're
character.
Interrupting me now. Shut up
called Muhammad.
Let me finish this.
Okay.
You're talking about the one
that's
John of Damascus.
Ad hominem that we just did right now.
Yes, that is. You're right. I stand accused. Can you see right here that even John of Damascus, writing in 730, so that's the 8th century, he's talking about a Muhammad, but who is that Muhammad? He's Mahmud, which is the Persian spelling of his name, which means he's from Iraq. More than that,
we're speculating.
Could you let me finish? Can you realize that that Muhammad he's referring to, he has 4 different Qur'ans, 4 different references, the cow, the woman, and the camel, which doesn't even exist in the Quran. It's not even a Quran that we know about. And also that Muhammad, if you look and see the references in the 7th century to him, he is in Jerusalem, he also is in Gaza, he is in Damascus, and he's in Hira. None of these are in the Hijaz.
John of
You've just
Damascus,
made my point.
John of Damascus said all of that?
No, these are the Muhammads that he's referring to. These are all the references to Muhammad in the 7th century.
But we are speculating.
I'm giving you evidence. I'm giving you no speculation here.
Well, Hoyland never talked about these things, even though he collected a lot of evidence.
Hoyland actually has every one of these that I've just quoted.
But he never made the claim that there are multiple Muhammads.
No, he said the doctrine. No, do you notice what Hoyland does? He even calls them Muslim, where there's no reference to any word called Muslim that early. But here's what's fascinating. You have tried to come back and say that you can't, that John of Damascus used a man named Muhammad. In the 8th century, there's no problem. I have no difficulty by 730.
He's talking about someone that existed.
I'm talking about in the 7th century. Where is that Muhammad?
But he talked about someone that existed.
Those in the Hijaz? Did John of Damascus say
it doesn't matter where he existed. Right there, at least Shoemaker is making the claim that someone by the name Muhammad existed.
Shoemaker's putting him in the Hijaz.
Well, it doesn't matter.
You haven't answered my question.
We have shut down the Hijaz.
How is it that he can be in the Hijaz? Answer my question.
Well, you can make any claim about Muhammad until we have tangible evidence to support the fact that a person by that name physically existed north, who was the prophet of a religion called Islam.
Have you seen what's happened here? Yeah. Have you noticed? As much as he has tried to support Shoemaker's case, can you see the difficulty that all the Shoemakers of the world, and I don't want to just talk about Shoemaker, anybody that claims that this man Muhammad came from the Hijaz, came from Mecca, Medina, you're going to have to put him down there and support it. So far, the only references he has come to are an 8th century reference, but he has also pointed to the 7th century references that Hoyland does refer to, Nikyu, the Doctrine of Jacobi, also the writings of Sabaeus.
Out of time, by the way.
And those are all way up north. Exactly my point. They're all up in the north.
What are we going to talk about next? Are we going to continue this?
Actually, we're going to go into the Quran itself, and we're going to confront this claim, has it ever been changed?
What was his, I'll be interested in his conclusion about the Quran itself, beside those conclusions.
I'm going to talk about what D says, Guillaume D, but we're running out of time. Let's continue. Guillaume D confronts this, and he makes this confrontation. He said, Shoemaker says in the very next paragraph that there is little doubt concerning a number of basic facts about Muhammad's prophetic cure. And then he goes and lists them. He says, how can this be? He's kind of pulling his hair out. How can he make one reference saying nothing can happen this far south, and then just say, well, Muhammad was from this place? He's coming up to the same conclusion I'm coming up. He's in France saying this. I'm here in the United States.
Fair enough. Everybody, stay tuned until next time. Until then, have a blessed day. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, Sira International, and click on the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we publish a new video or go live. I would also like to appeal to you to consider becoming a Patreon patron by clicking the link right below. By doing so, you can give towards the production of these videos. There are also other options for you where you can give to our channel. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.